It was just another winter afternoon in Ponca City, Oklahoma, when the glass doors of Tiffany Co. gently swung open and a tiny pair of worn brown shoes stepped inside. 5-year-old Rachel Watson stood at the entrance, her small fingers curled tightly around a single copper penny. Outside, the wind howled down the street. Inside, the store glowed with crystal chandeliers, polished marble floors, and rows of diamonds shining like frozen stars. She took one nervous step forward. Conversation slowed. Heads turned. A few customers paused mid-browsing as their eyes drifted down from her braided hair to the scuffed toes of her shoes. Behind the counter, 2 well-dressed clerks exchanged amused glances. One leaned toward the other and whispered, just loud enough to be heard, "Is this the joke?" Soft laughter rippled through the quiet showroom. Rachel didn't notice the luxury. She didn't see the diamonds. All she saw was her reflection in the glass cases and the penny in her palm. Today was her mother's birthday, and in her sweet, innocent heart, 1 cent felt like enough to buy something beautiful. She walked up to the counter and lifted her hand. "Excuse me, ma'am," she whispered. "Can I buy a present for my mommy with this?" The laughter grew louder. A customer near the display let out a short, amused chuckle. One clerk covered her smile with her hand. Another shook her head slowly, already reaching for the phone. "Sweetie, do you know where you are?" a voice said with thin politeness. Rachel's smile faltered. "She's wasting our time," someone muttered. "Should we call security?" another whispered. The word security made Rachel's chest tighten. Her eyes shimmered with sudden tears. She clutched the penny harder, her knuckles turning white. "I'm sorry," she murmured. "I just wanted something small for my mama." Her voice trembled, but she didn't move. She didn't leave. Somewhere at home, her mother was waiting for a birthday surprise, and Rachel refused to give up on that dream. What she didn't know, what none of the laughing customers realized, was that someone else was listening. From a private entrance at the back of the store, a tall man in a dark tailored suit had just stepped inside, and he had heard everything. The murmurs, the mockery, the word security spoken about a trembling little girl holding a single cent. His steps slowed. His face hardened, because the billionaire owner of Tiffany Co., Denzel Depp, was about to step into a moment that would change every single person in that room forever. Let's go back to where it all began. But before we begin, if you're ready to hear the whole story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as crazy as this one, and you don't want to miss it. Now let's get into it. As he stood there in silence, watching the frightened child clutch her penny, a distant memory from long before wealth and power rushed back to him without warning. But for now, the store moved on as if nothing sacred were unfolding. Soft classical music floated through the air. Diamonds glittered beneath crystal glass. Velvet-lined trays displayed necklaces worth more than most homes in Ponca City. Every surface shone, gold trim, mirrored walls, polished marble floors that reflected strangers' faces like cold, perfect water. At the center of it all stood Rachel Watson, small and trembling. Behind the main counter, the sales manager, a tall woman with perfectly styled blonde hair and a sharp smile, watched with thinly veiled disapproval. To her left stood Lydia, a younger clerk with heavy makeup and impatient eyes. On the other side was Mark, stiff in his tailored vest, arms crossed as if guarding the store from intrusion. Rachel lifted her chin just enough to speak again. "It's my mama's birthday," she said softly. "I just want something little, something pretty." The words were pure. The response was not. A quiet snort escaped from Lydia. Mark glanced at the penny and muttered, "This is absurd." Several customers nearby exchanged glances. Smiles formed. One turned away, hiding laughter behind a gloved hand. Another leaned closer to hear, eager for the spectacle. The sales manager bent forward slightly, her voice sweet but sharp. "Sweetheart, nothing in this store cost a penny." "I know," Rachel said quickly, panic creeping into her voice. "But I can give you this, and maybe it's enough." The laughter was no longer subtle. A man in an expensive gray coat stepped closer, eyes gleaming with mockery. "A penny," he scoffed. "That won't even buy the air you're breathing in here." More laughter followed. Rachel's face burned. Heat rushed to her eyes. She looked down at the floor, at her small reflection caught in the marble beneath her feet. Her fingers curled tighter around the penny until it left a red mark in her palm. The sales manager leaned toward Mark and whispered, not quietly enough, "Call security before this turns into something messy." Rachel heard it. Her shoulders sank. I can leave," she whispered. "I'm sorry." But she didn't move. Somewhere inside her tiny chest, shame and hope collided. She tightened her grip on the penny again, as if it were the only thing keeping her standing. The store's judgment had grown loud now. Public, cruel, and every word was cutting deeper than anyone there realized. The first laugh was quiet. Then another followed. And then, like a match dropped into dry leaves, the sound spread. A ripple of amusement traveled across the showroom, bouncing off crystal cases and velvet displays. It grew louder, sharper, no longer hidden behind gloved hands or polite coughs. One employee near the back tilted his head and called out loudly, "Hey, sweetheart, are you lost?" A fresh wave of chuckles answered him. Mark let out a short laugh and shook his head. That penny wouldn't even buy a cleaning rag in this place. The words hit harder than a shove. Rachel flinched. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to make anyone mad. I can go." "I didn't know." Tears welled in her eyes. One slipped down her cheek before she could stop it. "I'm really sorry," she said again and again, each apology smaller than the last. Behind the counter, Lydia leaned close to the sales manager and murmured, "Security's on the way." It was said casually, like placing an order. Rachel heard that too. Her small body trembled. Her feet shifted as if she might finally run, yet she stayed rooted to the marble floor. The penny in her hand was damp now from sweat and tears. "I just needed something," she pleaded softly. "Just something little. Mama is waiting for her present." Her voice cracked on the word mama. A few customers looked away. One woman pressed her lips together, as if uneasy. Another man shifted his weight, discomfort flickering in his eyes. But no one spoke. No one intervened. Silence would have required courage. So the laughter filled the space instead. "Kids these days," someone muttered with a smirk. "Unbelievable," another replied. Rachel's quiet crying blended into the hum of the store's music. Her shoulders shook, but still she did not leave. She stood there, small and exposed beneath the chandeliers, clinging to her penny as if it were a promise she could not abandon. The store had made its choice. It had chosen spectacle over mercy, judgment over kindness, amusement over humanity. And as the sound of approaching footsteps echoed faintly from the far hallway, security drawing nearer, Rachel waited in the middle of the showroom, crying in silence, still believing her mother was worth the ridicule. Denzel Depp had not planned to enter the showroom that afternoon. The visit was supposed to be quiet, just a routine inspection through the private corridor reserved for executives and security. No announcements, no attention, just observation. That was how he liked it. As his polished shoes moved across the silent marble hallway behind the showroom walls, a sudden burst of laughter drifted through the partition. Not the soft, polite kind, the cruel kind. His steps slowed. "Call security," a woman's voice muttered through the wall. Denzel's brow furrowed. He adjusted his cufflink and continued forward, already assuming the worst. Another shoplifting attempt, he thought. It wouldn't have been the first. People tried their luck more often than the public realized. Then another voice followed, sharper, amused. "That penny wouldn't even buy a cleaning rag in this place." Denzel stopped cold. A pause. A child's trembling voice carried faintly through the room. "I just wanted something little. Mama is waiting for her present." The word struck differently. He pushed open the private door. The scene revealed itself in layers. Crystal cases first, velvet trays, staff clustered near the counter, customers gathered in a loose semicircle. And in the middle of it all stood a tiny girl, her shoulders shaking, a single penny clutched in her shaking hand. Not a thief, not a threat, a child. Denzel's assumption collapsed instantly. His jaw tightened. The faint curiosity in his eyes hardened into something colder. Controlled. Dangerous. He took one deliberate step onto the showroom floor. The laughter faltered. Another step. Silence began to spread. No one noticed him at first. Not until the air itself seemed to change. A pressure settled over the room. Conversations died mid-syllable. Smiles vanished. Employees stiffened. The sales manager turned, color draining from her face. "Sir." Denzel raised a single hand. No shouting, no rushing, just absolute command and stillness. All movement in the store stopped. His gaze passed over the frozen staff, the uneasy customers, and finally settled on the trembling little girl standing alone beneath the chandelier. The penny glistened in her palm. The room felt smaller suddenly. Power had entered, and everyone could feel it. Denzel did not speak. He stood just beyond the edge of the spotlight, half hidden by a display of diamond chokers, his presence still unknown to most of the room. His silence was deliberate. He listened. The sales manager recovered first. She forced a brittle smile and gestured toward Rachel. Sweetheart, we've already explained. This is not a place for charity cases. The word landed like a slap. A few customers shifted. Someone snorted. Lydia leaned closer to Rachel and said in a falsely gentle tone, "Why don't you take your coin and run along now before security gets here?" Rachel's hands trembled. She lifted the penny again with both palms, as if offering it to the air itself. I can add another one later," she whispered. "If Mama likes it, I can come back." Her voice broke. "I just want to make her smile." Denzel's jaw tightened. Still, he did not move. The clerks chuckled softly. Mark shook his head. "This is getting embarrassing," he said. "You can't just wander into places like this expecting handouts." Tears spilled freely now. Rachel wiped her cheeks with the sleeve of her dress, leaving faint wet stains on the fabric. Still, she held the penny out in front of her, refusing to drop it, refusing to leave. Behind the counter, the sales manager straightened. "Security should be here any second," she announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Then this little situation will be over." Denzel stepped forward. One slow step, then another. His shoes made no sound on the marble, yet somehow every head turned. The store fell silent. No music, no whispers, no laughter, only breathing. Employees instinctively shifted aside, creating an open path as he walked through the stunned crowd. Customers held their breath. The staff's faces drained of color. They assumed the verdict had arrived. Expulsion, judgment, removal. Denzel stopped a few steps from Rachel. He looked at her trembling hands, the penny trembling with her, then lifted his gaze to the sales manager. The silence stretched, tight as a wire. Then his voice cut through the room, calm but edged with steel. "Who taught you to speak to a child like that?" The sales manager opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. Denzel's gaze moved slowly from one employee to the next. Lydia, Mark, the manager, his eyes cold, unwavering. "Every single one of you heard yourselves just now," he said quietly. "And still you kept going." No one spoke. "You laughed at a child," he continued. "You measure her worth by a coin. You turned innocence into entertainment." His voice hardened. "This store was built on craftsmanship, trust, and dignity, not cruelty, not pride, not public humiliation." The manager stammered. "Sir, we were only trying to—" "Stop," Denzel said sharply. "You were trying to protect comfort, not values." He turned to Mark. "Suspended. Effective immediately." Mark's face went white. He turned to Lydia. "You're done here. Pack your things." A quiet gasp rippled through the showroom. Finally, Denzel faced the sales manager. "And you will not represent my name ever again." He lifted his phone and sent one brief message. "You're terminated." The words landed like thunder. The customers stood frozen, eyes wide. No one dared whisper now. Some stared at the floor. Others watched with hands over their mouths. A woman near the window wiped tears from her cheeks. Then Denzel turned away from the staff. Slowly, deliberately, he knelt in front of Rachel. His voice changed completely. Soft, steady, kind. "Hey there, little one," he said gently. "You didn't do anything wrong. Do you hear me?" Rachel nodded faintly, still clutching the penny. Her lips trembled. She didn't understand why everyone had suddenly gone quiet, why the man in the dark suit was talking to her like she mattered. He smiled at her. "Your heart," he said, placing a hand over his own chest, "is worth more than every diamond in this store." Her eyes widened in shock. Fear, confusion. "But I only have 1 cent, she whispered. Denzel shook his head. "And yet you came with all the courage in the world." The power in the room had shifted completely. The people who had laughed now stood in shame. Some wept openly. Rachel stared up at him, unsure whether to cry or run. The store that had once felt terrifying now felt unbearably quiet. For the first time since she walked in, someone had seen her. Not as a joke, not as a problem, but as a child. Denzel rose slowly from his knees and looked out over the silent showroom. Then he looked back at Rachel. "You may choose anything you want," he said gently. "Anything at all." A quiet gasp rippled through the store. Rachel blinked. "Anything," she whispered, her voice barely louder than the soft music that had started playing again. He nodded. "Anything." Her small fingers tightened around the penny as she took one hesitant step forward. Every eye in the store followed her. The same people who had laughed now watched in breathless silence. She passed rows of glittering diamond necklaces. Gold bracelets shimmered beneath crystal lights. Pearls rested on velvet like tiny moons. The lights reflected in her wide eyes, but she never reached for any of them. Her footsteps were slow, careful. She stopped at a small display near the edge of the showroom. On it lay simple ribbons in soft colors. Pink, blue, white. Rachel reached out and picked up a pale pink ribbon. She held it between her fingers as if it were fragile treasure. "For my mommy's hair," she said quietly. "She likes when I braid it." The store held its breath. No laughter, no whispers, only silence. Denzel's chest tightened. His eyes burned as he watched her clutch the ribbon like it was worth more than everything behind the glass. The penny, still warm from her palm, had become something else now. Not money. Faith. Innocence. Hope. He stepped forward and gently closed her fingers around the ribbon. "It's beautiful," he said. Rachel smiled for the first time since she had walked in. Without a word, Denzel turned and walked to the counter. He placed his black card quietly on the glass. "I'll take care of it," he said. No one moved. No one spoke. The transaction was silent, reverent. When he returned, he knelt again and placed the small ribbon into Rachel's hands, as if he were placing a crown upon her. "It's yours," he said. She looked at the ribbon, then at him. "Thank you, sir," she whispered. Tears slipped down Denzel's face before he could stop them. In a room filled with gold and diamonds, the smallest item had become the most powerful, and everyone knew it. Rachel stepped through the glass doors with the ribbon cupped carefully in both hands. The crowd inside parted for her without a word. Where laughter had once followed her, silence now made a path. The customers who had mocked her turned their faces away as she passed. Some stared at the floor. Others blinked back tears. The shame in the air was heavier than the perfume and polished marble she left behind. Outside, the cold Oklahoma air touched her cheeks, but her steps felt lighter than they had all day. She began to walk home through the quiet streets of Ponca City, past small houses with porch lights glowing, past pickup trucks dusted with road salt, past windows where families gathered for dinner. Her worn shoes tapped softly on the sidewalk, but her heart felt full. She lifted the ribbon to her chest, as if it were a treasure that might disappear if she loosened her grip. By the time she reached the small house at the end of the block, her cheeks were red from the cold and from holding back a smile that had nowhere to go. She pushed the door open. "Mama," Rachel called. Her mother looked up from the small kitchen table, tired eyes softening at the sound of her voice. "You're back already, baby?" Rachel ran to her and carefully placed the ribbon in her hands. "This is for your hair," she said proudly. "For your birthday." Her mother stared at the ribbon in confusion at first. Then realization struck. Her lips trembled. Tears spilled freely down her face as she sank into a chair and pulled Rachel into her arms. She held her tightly, shaking with quiet sobs. You didn't have to do this," she whispered. Rachel hugged her back just as tight. "I wanted to," she said. "A nice man helped me." Her mother pulled back slightly, wiping her eyes. "A nice man?" Rachel nodded eagerly. "He said my heart was bigger than the whole store." Her mother broke down completely then, pressing her forehead to her daughter's and crying in grateful disbelief. In that small living room, far from marble floors and crystal lights, the ribbon shone brighter than any diamond ever could. And for the first time in a long while, hope felt real again. By morning, the store felt different. Whispers moved through the halls where laughter once lived. The sales manager's office sat dark and empty. 2 clerks were quietly escorted out before opening hours, their faces tight with shock and regret. Others worked in uneasy silence, each movement careful, each word restrained. News of what had happened the night before traveled fast, though no headlines were printed. Customers spoke of it in hushed tones over coffee. A 5-year-old girl, a single penny, a billionaire who chose a child's dignity over profit. Some of the employees who remained could barely meet one another's eyes. The memory of Rachel's trembling hands and shaking voice lingered in their minds. For the first time, they questioned the sharp words they had used so easily. For the first time, the mirrors of the store reflected more than polished faces. They reflected guilt. High above the showroom, Denzel Depp sat alone in his private office. The city stretched beneath his window, quiet and small compared to the empire he had built. Yet his thoughts were not on numbers or contracts that morning. They were on a little girl with braided hair and a penny clutched in her fist. He reached into his desk and pulled out a thin folder. Within the hour, several anonymous donations were approved. Children's shelters, food programs, schools for families who struggled in silence. No press releases, no public thanks, just quiet action, because some things were meant only for the heart. That night, in a store once ruled by pride, humility had taken root. One small coin had exposed great arrogance. One small child had changed the spirit of a powerful man's store. And somewhere in Ponca City, a mother tucked a simple ribbon into her hair and held her daughter a little tighter than before. To you who listen to this story, remember this. Compassion costs nothing, but it can change everything. What will you rate this story? And what part of the world are you watching from? Comment your country below. Let's build a global community rooted in kindness and second chances. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe and share it with your friends. Your support brings us closer to our 1K subscriber milestone and inspires us to keep creating more emotional stories of resilience, healing, and Black excellence. Thank you for being part of our journey. Your presence matters more than you know.